remember 2 years ago I asked you that when people like the Auditor General and her staff that were coming down here for PSC committee and the witnesses, they'd be allowed to park in the parking lot. So why are they not being allowed to park in the parking lot today in Irene? Deputy Sergeant at Arms to bring in the witnesses who are in house and to ask the Sarge to bring the ones who are coming in by Zoom. You can take this off. Huh? Yeah.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give to this Honorable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this Honorable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this Honourable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, I will. Good evening. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Daniel Tatum and Mr. Guismo Kolyasivov, or whatever that's supposed to be.
Trozino Kolyakovo, thank you.
And Mr. Mayo Smith in the chambers, and we have on Zoom Mr. David Bernstein and Miss Keisha Taylor. I only see one person. Thanks for coming. And as you would have been made aware, this afternoon we're dealing with the Office of the Auditor General's report on the efficiency and effectiveness of the Utility Regulatory and Competition Office, commonly known as OFREG, on report done June the 20th, June 2020. And the purpose of you being here is last week we had the people who do the regulating, and this week we decided to invite the people who are being regulated so that we could hear from you all as well. The rules are, if the first time you speak, give your full name and your position so that it's recorded properly in the Hansard. And I would invite Mr. Chris to lead off the questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to thank everyone for attending this afternoon. Just to expand on what the chairman said, the purpose of this session is more informational, public educational. It's not meant to be adversarial, confrontational, or anything like that. And pretty much we're just trying to get a better understanding in terms of what can be done to make sure that we have a regulator that is more effective and more efficient. And with that, I just want to start my first question. Having transitioned from the ICTA, which was came about around 2003, 2004, which prior to the merger of OFREG being created, what has been your experiences now, having dealt with ICTA before versus now the combined OFREG? How have you guys found that transition? Has it been the same? Has it been better? Can it be a little bit more effective? Like, just your general views, really. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Tatum. I am the B2C commercial director for Cable and Wireless, or Flow. For you, Mr. Chairman, to answer the question, we find that OFREG has been pretty much operating the same. I guess with ICTA, when we looked at them before, they tend to be probably a little bit faster in actually delivering and some of the services that they provide in terms of regulating us. And so operationally, they've been pretty much the same, but I mean, there's some areas where probably think there can be improvements. And you know, to give an example of those, you know, our licensing framework, 2 years ago we started that process, and that hasn't been completed yet. And they did a significant market study as well, and it's going on 3 years, and that hasn't been done yet. So things like that, which is important, but you know, in terms of the interaction and, you know, I should say the day-to-day management of OFREG, it's been pretty much the same, and they've been, you know, cooperative and working with us through those times.
Thank you very much. I actually took the liberty of actually going through, well, liberty, no pun intended, Liberty Latin America SEC 10K filing for 2019. And I noticed inside it, under your regulatory matters, and just to read it, to put it in context for yourself and listen public, it says, as the incumbent telecommunication provider in many of its jurisdictions, Cable and Wireless is subject to significant regulatory oversight with respect to the provision of fixed line and mobile telephony service. Generally, in these markets, Cable and Wireless operates under a government-issued license or concession that enables it to own and operate its telecommunication networks, including the establishment of wireless networks and the use of spectrum. These licenses and concessions are typically non-exclusive and have renewable multi-year terms that include competitive, qualitative, and rate regulation. Licenses and concessions are scheduled to expire over the next 2 years in the Cayman Islands and Turks and Caicos. We believe we have complied with all local requirements to have existing license renewed and have provided all necessary information to enable local authorities to process applications for renewal in a timely manner. With that being said, and you said you started this process 2 years ago and your license is subject to expire in the next 2 years. Have you received any feedback yet then as to, because the fact that is actually included in your 10K filings with the U.S. SEC shows it is something of great importance to your organization. Have you guys received any feedback yet as to what is the delay, as to why that license hasn't been renewed as yet?
Well, just through you, Mr. Chair, just on a point of correction, we have had a one-year extension, and that extension was extended again this year while they go through they're looking at this significant market study that they're doing before they can conclude. I mean, that's the feedback we got before they can conclude the new license framework.
The last part of that statement, which I didn't read, it says, in addition, in some of the ECTEL as defined below, states we are operating on the expired license and have applied for renewal of such licenses. We expect that such licenses will be granted or renewed as applicable. So currently you guys are operating under a 1-year extension. That carries up to what time period?
Well, what I could do, my chief of regulatory is on here, so I would defer that question to him so he can go a little bit more in depth. David?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman. My name is David Bernstein. I'm a Senior Manager of Regulatory Finance for Flow. And I just wanted to confirm, can you hear me and see me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so OFREG initiated a public consultation to review the licenses, the license templates in June of 2019. And that proceeding is a prerequisite to renewing the licenses of each operator, all of which have expired. That proceeding is, as I said, it's outstanding. We don't know exactly when it's going to conclude. And therefore, we don't know when our licenses will be renewed. We do know that our license currently is set to expire at the end of December of this year.
This license that you have right now, what was the time? Was that the 15-year license that was issued, or how long was this license that you're operating on? What was the time frame for it?
Yes, it was the license was initiated in 2003 and it expired July of 2018. And since July of 2018, it's been continuously extended by OFREG.
Okay. Well, we have OFREG back here tomorrow, but what exactly have they identified what the contentious issue may be, or just a matter more of timing, or everybody has been busy?
I think that's a question for OFREG to answer. I believe that my understanding is that they believe the licenses need to be updated and streamlined to make them current. And so they've initiated a public consultation to do that. But they've received comments on their proposals that are causing them to reevaluate the reforms that they're making. And I believe that's slowing them down, but I think that's a question to OFREG as to why this is outstanding over a year now, or 2 years for us.
Well, I can assure you, we'll definitely raise that with them tomorrow. That much I can assure you. I know they're watching too, so that's fine. So at least they know that question is coming for tomorrow. One of the things I noticed is that with the transition now with Liberty Latin America, I believe is now the owner of Cable and Wireless / Flow. Well, Cable and Wireless Cayman. That is correct. Okay. In terms of the cultural shift, or has there been any shift in terms of priorities that became different between Liberty's core values, core vision, or what it is that they want to achieve as a company, versus the legacy in terms of when you guys acquire this business, like where do you guys see this business going now, as opposed to where it is, or where would you like to see it to go?
Well, to answer that question, since we've been taken over by Liberty, or purchased by Liberty, we've been moving more in the direction of the areas that they work, or I should say of their strengths. So for example, this year we purchased IT Outsource, which gives us a little bit more reach within the community. So Liberty is always looking to enhance the offering to our customers, and in fact, to streamline our businesses, right? And this was one of those moves that we made just recently here. So Liberty has been good for the business, in fact, good for Cayman as well. So the culture change that you speak to has been a positive one.
Thanks, I'm happy to hear that. I couldn't help but notice with a little bit of, I guess, political jealousy to some extent. When I was again going through your SEC filings that, and this is taken from page 10, when it looks at the different maximum download speed being offered in some region. Panama is 1,000 megs, Jamaica 150 megs, Bahamas 300 megs, Trinidad and Tobago 500 megs, Barbados 1,000 megs, and other CNW 100 megs, Chile 600 megs, Costa Rica 200 megs, and Puerto Rico 500 megs. I'm assuming that Cable and Wireless is in that other CNW. At least I'm just assuming. With that said, I'm just curious in terms of broadband speed has been one of the biggest contentious issues within the public. And I think a few months ago, there was even a report that Cayman was the 13th most expensive country in the world with regards to broadband speed in terms of what they're paying for and what they're receiving. And with that said, where do we see eventually, like, what it is that Liberty, well, Cable and Wireless is looking to get to in terms of speed, and also what kind of prices can we kind of expect in terms of, like, what's the future in terms of where we're going with broadband? It's pretty much a nutshell question.
Mr. Chair, through you, last year we introduced the 100 meg broadband speed and our Watch All TV package at $159. This year, and I'm just going to put this out, that this year we just introduced our superhero package, which is 200 megs broadband speed, and our Watch All TV, which is 152 plus channels. So we are continuing to increase our speeds. And if you look back chronologically from 2004 to now, you know, we brought our prices down on per meg price from it's around $71 per meg to right now where we stand is about $162 per meg. If you look at our 200 meg package, the superhero package that we got now, in essence, it's $1 a meg right now, plus TV for free. So it is our goal to continue to meet the demands of our customers, and because we are market driven, and as we expand out in the different areas with our fiber footprint, we will continue to offer these speeds. But right now, in our fiber footprint, we are offering speeds of 200 megs. And on the copper side of the fence, we, you know, it depends on how much they can get. So some customers can get 100 megs, some can get 70. It's all dependent on the physics.
Yeah, so within the Eastern District, there are some parts of the Eastern District already that is getting these speeds as a whole. And I want to say Bordentown, and I'm going to be a little bit more centered and say Bordentown West. But exactly when can we expect to start getting those level of service out in the Eastern Districts?
Well, right now in the Eastern Districts, we passed almost 700 homes already over there with our fiber optic networks. What we tend to do in terms of the build out, right, the approach that we've been taking is to the areas where we have a lot of complaints and slower speeds, we tend to build them out as a priority. So those, because of copper and the physics related to that, those that are further away from our exchanges, we tend to build those out first. So last year we passed Cayman Kai because the average speeds in that area at the time was under 20 megs, and we had people looking for more because once we launch our TV product, the TV occupies space on the broadband line. So in order for us to deliver the service, we had to do one of two things. Increase the capacity of the line, which is we can't change the physics, or put the fibers in. And you start putting fibers there. I mean, there was some areas in North Side, in an area called Further Road is a good example, where it's, you know, people live far in the land, and instead of us going in there and trying something different with the copper cabling that we had, we decided to put fiber in there. And now those customers are all served on fiber. So, Mr. Chairman, we tend to expand, or we continue to expand our network as customers demand it. You know, and listen to the proceedings of this honorable House over the last couple of days. I clearly understand where you guys are coming from, and it is our duty to continue to expand out. So, for the honorable member, we are expanding east. We are pushing east. You know, COVID has delayed some of that, but we continue to push east. Last year, we passed some 700 homes in the Savannah area, and it is our intention to continue to push east.
You say you connect people in the eastern districts
Yes, sir.
according to demand on fiber. Is that why people in Caymankai in the richer areas have fiber, but the people that I represent, Northside, Old Man Bay, Hot Land, we can't get anything?
Actually, Mr. Chair, we have an application in front of us now with DataLink to actually go into the Hotland area.
So you're sending me further down the road again?
No, I'm not sending you. No, not at all. So, because we're the only provider in that area, and there are some requirements they have of us that we need to change. Lower cables on the poles, change the locations of some of the poles, and then we got to make rate of costs that we need to, you know, pay them to get the work done.
Right.
So, and just talking to our engineering team about that and see where part we are, because this has been in front of them now for several months since we finished Caymankai February last year. So we will continue to build out north side. Like I said, we did for the road, and that was the first one we did. And then the Hotland area being far away from the exchange.
But again, how many houses are there on further road? 5?
I think there might
Three.
have been. No, it's more than that.
3? No. I go down the regular.
I got about
And I don't think that the service that they're getting right now is much better than what they were getting when they had copper.
No, well, what we did, just so you're aware.
But I know one particular person lives down further road.
Well, okay. Well, I just to share with you, there were several customers in there that we had to provide service over our mobile network because they wanted speeds higher than 10 megs, right? And in order for us to keep the customers happy in there, I think we have about some in the region of about 11 customers there. So in order to keep them, all those customers happy, because there was a lot of faults they were getting. Instead of us rerunning copper cables to a place where we know had issues with copper before, we took the opportunity to put fiber in, which is cheaper to put in. But at the same time, there were several poles that we had to make ready.
And you're feeding them from the
North side.
box and from the north side exchange
Yes.
by the graveyard.
Yes. So we have a new fiber node, if you will, in the north side exchange there now.
But it is my understanding that you have fiber by the Ronald Frost playing field, and I've been trying to get connected now for 3 years, and I can't get connected. And I'm less than 200 feet, 300 feet.
Yes.
As a crow flies, 300 feet by road, 1,000 feet.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, to explain that, we have what we call a fiber to the curb solution, which right now by the play field is fed from a fiber to the curb solution. In other words, we have, if you will, a mini exchange outside of the gates of the north side playing field. And from that, again, the whole idea here is to defeat physics, right? From that is to get, limit the loop length to each one of our customers. So for example, persons in the area that you live can get speeds in excess of 60 megs right now.
You sure, Doc? Because I am paying for something that I ain't getting personally.
Well, we can have a discussion about that after.
Yeah, I don't want.
Sure, but
I'm only using myself as an example.
Yeah.
But this is the complaint that I get from my constituents all the time. Mr. Arden McLean gets the complaint from his constituents all the time. Mr. Chris gets it from his people in Bordentown West all the time.
Okay.
We're not getting what we're paying for. And your technician comes to my house,
Yeah.
and I ask him, why am I not getting? I think I'm now paying for 10, right? And I'm only getting 6. But he look at me and tell me, well, what you need to do, sir, is pay for 25 and you'll get 10.
Well,
And he told me the truth. I said, how can you do that? He said, we just turn up the screw.
well, I'm going to put a correction there. Right now, the average customer in Northside is, the average line rates in Northside right now is 30 megs. In East End, it's actually 40, right? And just a couple of days ago, we upgraded the MSAN, as we call it, by the East End playing field. So people there can get higher speeds during peak time, right, in case there was congestion on the lines. So in your particular area, I assure you, Mr. Chair, that the customers in that area can get, depending as close as you are, can get up to 60 megs. Now, when we talk about speed, it's a subjective thing, right? With each house that we install or service, we do what we call a birth certificate. And before we leave, we actually confirm the speeds. However, if you're working on Wi-Fi or you speed testing on a server that's not in Cayman, right, which we have our own servers as well, here, Ookla server here, that you can speed test to, you will get a different speed. Some customers have been speed testing in servers in Jamaica or Key West. When they go on Ookla, they pick up those servers, so they'll get a different type of speed. In terms of the Wi-Fi coverage in homes, that's another issue. Wi-Fi actually causes problems with speeds because if you connect directly to the boxes, you'll get a right speed. You get the speed in which you'll see the speed in which you pay. Wi-Fi is dependent on the number of devices in your home, will determine the speed that you get. A lot of people today, and we've seen that, I guess, more so through the COVID time, because we did free upgrades to thousands of our customers so that they could continue to work from home. Well, one of the things that we realized is that with Aerobot in the house, using the internet at once, the speed obviously comes down, right? And people don't realize how many connections they do have. Each mobile phone is a connection. Each smart Alexa box in the house is a connection. Each thermostat, smart thermostat, is a connection. Each camera is a connection. So sometimes the customers speak to us and we say, well, you got 22 connections in the home, and we go through and list them because each TV box that they have, over-the-top box that they have, is a connection. With our TV, it's not like that. We have a separate VLAN, a separate circuit, if you will, that our TV is delivered over, which don't cause the problem. But for each connection they have in their home, and most people have 2 or 3 TVs, they have a problem with congestion. And what I would say to customers out there that's listening is, you're having problems with your broadband speed, speak to us. Again, during the COVID period, we realized that a lot, I wish we knew this before, but a lot of our customers subscribed to our lower plans, hence the reason why we went and gave people free upgrades. And it worked for a lot of our customers. Those customers that had issues, we actually fixed the problem. And to that end, we just purchased a new broadband copper modem that takes 2 lines, allow you to install 2 lines to the house so that you can get not double the speed, but not say 75% more speed than you were getting on the original line. So there are things that we do.
Yeah. What does Cisco have that they have put in by the Civic Center for everybody to get free Wi-Fi that seems to be a lot better than what you have? What is it that they have put there that you are not prepared to install in our side?
So it's an interesting question, Mr. Chair. We actually are the broadband providers behind the setups in all of the civic centers in Cayman. So in working with OFREG, and this is one of the good things that they do, OFREG that is, what we did, we are the service provider that's powering the internet for each one of those civic centers. So we partner with them. We provide broadband speeds in, excess of 30 megs in some places, more in others, depending on where we had the fiber. And so what they've done is no different. They're using our broadband. And I think that might come back to the point that I made earlier. It is the Wi-Fi piece that is different. So if you have a more expensive Cisco-type Wi-Fi in your home, it can make the difference to you in the perception and the speed that you actually receive.
Offer that to your customers right now. You have to use your equipment.
Well,
and yours is less than Cisco.
Well, my equipment now doubles as a gateway to the internet as well as a Wi-Fi. And, we've took a look at this because it's all about efficiency with us as well. A truck roll, one of my techs going out and taking a look and see that it is expensive. A truck roll is expensive. And we want to reduce the truck roll so we can spend our money in other places. So in doing that, we actually have taken a look at different Wi-Fi systems out there. And being a part of Liberty Global, we asked what you do in Europe, and they're coming back with solutions for us that can be A, cost effective, and B, reliable. And reliability is a big play for us. To win in this world, we're part of the pressure and price continues to be hard, and our appearance here is part of that today. What we want to do is to make sure we can do end-to-end testing with these equipment that we put on, not just stick a piece of equipment on the end and hope for the best. So we want to do end-to-end testing on that, and we're working on that right now.
Yeah, the only little beef I have with it would flow is I have about 100 light poles in Northside that are in dangerous proximity to the road because CUC has stopped using them, and most of them you have one wire connected to, and CUC can't take them down. Can I get a commitment to get those wires removed so we can take those poles down before Christmas?
Well, I can't give you a commitment before Christmas, but I certainly we will take a look at it. Just so you know, Mr. Chair, a lot of the poles there, and just so you can get an understanding of the magnitude of work you're talking about, the poles are concrete poles. They take CUC operate differently with us connecting to concrete poles, and many of the poles.
But from driving through the district, you're already connected to the concrete poles. You just have, these are just wires that are left on this one stump of a pole that's right at the side of the road.
Well, in those particular cases, we probably have wires that are not in use. Absolutely, you got my commitment that we'll take those down. But some of the poles that I'm speaking to as well have underground conduits going to them, meaning, and CUC planted a pole, or Data Link has planted a pole, say another 30 meters away or 10 meters away. We have to do over the trenching and cut the road, right? So we'll take a look at it, and
Yeah, I mean, it's been, but we're getting close up on 11 years since the poles have been moved. So thank you very much.
Understood.
Sorry, earlier, your mic's still on. Earlier, when Digicel, your competitor, was inside here, they were saying that their contention ratio was around 4-1. Now, you had said earlier that some of the lines in north side and Ezra can be up to 60 megs. But then, as we start adding on more customers, I mean, what kind of ratio are we looking at? Or is it a situation where, as you get more customers coming on, then naturally the speed will be reduced?
Well, on the broadband network that we have right now, through you, Mr. Chair, on the broadband network that we have right now, we're looking at contention ratios of 2-1 or 3-1. We're now up to 4-1 on the broadband side. I will say to you, during the lockdown period, we saw areas of part congestion was going up, and we have addressed those, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. For example, we saw some increase in requirements in the eastern area, and we actually went there and this week and complete the upgrade that we needed to do there. So we monitor these things closely because at the end of the day, like I said, it results in a truck roll. It results in a negative customer impression. So where we can actually solve those problems beforehand, we actually do. So you're looking at a 2-1, 3-1 contention ratio.
Several years ago, there was this campaign that Flow had launched. I think it was a $30 million investment campaign that they were looking to upgrade the network and everything else. What was the final outcome of that campaign, and how much was actually spent?
I think Mr. Chair, I think he's referring to the upgrade Cayman.
Yeah, I remember the figure being 30 million.
So that would be around 2015, you said?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, yeah.
Well, I'm going to put that on to my finance manager so he can speak a little bit more to the CapEx part of that. Joe?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josino Koliakovo, Finance Manager for Cable and Wireless. To your question through the chair, over the 10 years on average, well, over the 10 years, total CapEx spent has been roughly just shy of $100 million. So the intent of Cable and Wireless is to continue improvement year over year, to provide services, to continuous improvement technology to our customers. And how you were referencing early in terms of with the acquisition of the LLA, that's a synergy that we're still continuing now and into the future. So obviously from a spend perspective, That's a critical piece of our business to ensure that continuity, connection is always available, top-notch, state-of-the-art, so forth.
Sorry, just to be clear, over the last 10 years, $100 million worth of capex was actually spent in Cayman?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You said you have a 200 meg program that's available now, but people in Northside, if I bought, I just want you to understand you right, if I bought your 200 meg program, I could only get 30?
No. So I'll explain that to you. We wouldn't sell you the 200 meg in Northside. I have one customer that insisted that he get it in the Frankstown area. We told him he would never get the 200 meg, but he insisted that he get it. He wanted the maximum he can get. So what we did was we gave him the maximum he could get on that line. So for the copper customers in those areas, we have another hero plan that we sell, which is 20 megs with TV package, and that don't go for 200, that goes for $139. So we got something for the copper customers as well.
The 200 meg goes for how much?
$200
Right.
with TV.
And you said that 30 meg is going for 139?
The 20 megs with the TV package goes for $139, yes, sir.
So what are they getting extra? Why isn't it, when you divide out that number, that don't seem right? That seemed like the guy who's only getting 20 megs is getting overcharged.
Well, no, if you look at our standalone broadband prices right now for 20 meg, the nearest one to that is a 25 meg. That currently go for $134. So we added, I just want to get it right here, I think it's 100 channels in our TV Max package that gives them a TV as well, which would normally go for $90 a month. So they have a $134 plan plus a $90 TV plan. Instead of charging the $234 for it or the $224 for it, we reduced the prices to $139.
Is there any plans to upgrade your TV reception and provision in Eastern Districts?
Well, if you have the broadband service that we have now, the TV, you get the same TV you get anywhere in Ireland.
Well, my TV is still a lot of times, so you need a sense of how to check my house. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm serious that I've had BBC frozen for 2-3 weeks.
Okay, Mr. Chair, again, and to answer that question,
I think it's personal, but I want to use examples that I know about so you understand the complaints I'm getting throughout the district. This is not confined to me.
No, I understand.
Okay.
So to answer, just to expand on that a bit, if there's one particular channel that's given a problem, it isn't the broadband services that's doing that. There's something coming from our head ends, right? And or coming from the content provider himself. So if you have issues, or any one of the customers in Cayman have issues like that, please bring that to our attention because we can get those fixed fairly quick.
The problems I have is when I call you, sometimes I got to give the phone to my Spanish wife because I can't understand the people that talking to me and they can't understand me.
Well, to satisfy that requirement, we do have a local number that people can reach us on that we've been sharing. And we also have a WhatsApp store number that you can reach us on as well, 747-5050, and someone local will answer that. And during the COVID period, we didn't miss a beat. We got all our customers, and the WhatsApp number that we have, it escapes me right now. We probably are working virtually. Thousands of customers served. So you can reach us on the 747-5050 number if you have issues as well.
One of the things I was curious about is the local number portability that has basically been things in place now several years. What has been the feedback? I mean, how have you guys found that? I mean, did you guys see a lot of customers moving, like either coming to or going, or did that end up working out?
Well, Mr. Chair, through you, in the initial part of it, it was a lot of back and forth. The other provider took some of our customers, Digicel took some of our customers, we took some of theirs. And about 2 years in, it's kind of settled down. So what we see every now and again, one of us will do a switch campaign, and we'll start seeing some people move across. Of course, the next person responds, and it stops. So I think it's, in all honesty, it's giving people freedom to move if they want, right? Which is a plus for the country. They got choice because they can take their numbers. But primarily, I guess, over the last 3 to 4 years, the movement have generally been businesses, where we win a business and they come across, and they win a business and they'll go across. But in terms of for the general consumer, we offer good plans. They offer good plans, and the people just generally stay where they are unless they have a reason to move. But the option is there, which is a good thing.
One of the things that also jumped out on me was on page 34 of your SEC filings, where it basically says risk under the heading risks that relate to our operating overseas markets and being subject to foreign and domestic regulation. And it basically says our businesses are conducted almost exclusively outside of the U.S., which give rise to numerous operational risks. And one of the risks that was identified was difficulties in staffing and managing operations consistently through our several operating areas. Just wanted to touch on staffing. At one point, I know Cable and Wireless is about 98, 99, 100%, well, almost 100% local staff. What is that ratio like today now?
Okay. Yeah, so we have 97 employees currently. And we probably have, and I just going to go here, and please, Mr. Chair.
Ballpark is fine.
Ballpark is fine.
Yeah, ballpark is fine.
We probably have some in the region of, including PRs, we probably have some in the region of, I'd say 12 people on PR and work permits.
Not bad, thanks. And one of the things I'm curious about in terms of the local operations now, who is ultimately now in charge of the local operation? I mean, who's, yeah.
Well, our country manager right now is Mr. Paul Osborne. Unfortunately, he's in the UK dealing with his ailing father is terminally ill. So the operations are now run by myself and the senior management team, and with the help of consultants that LLA or CWC has provided us with.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear of the country manager's father, and I guess on behalf of the committee, I hope he has a speedy recovery and everything goes well in that regard. So, I do feel for you in these times. One of the things that we have gotten testimony on also has been the issue with regards to the whole data link type arrangement, where a lot of stuff can't be done because of the data link issue. And one of the criticism is that Cable and Wireless /Flow/Lime has been around forever and a day in this infrastructure. And everyone is kind of wondering, why is it where you have, I think, a duct network that pretty much has run throughout so much parts of the island and have gone in different places, why are there struggles in terms of even getting fiber to different places when you guys have basically built an entire all-island network? We're trying to understand, what are those challenges? And if there's a situation where, is there something that OFREG need to be doing, or something that someone needs to be doing to basically get that moved? Because I think everyone can agree that for the Cayman Islands and the product and services that we have, both in tourism and financial services industry, that we need to make sure that we have a world-class infrastructure. Absolutely. And we want to know what can we do as legislators, as policymakers, to basically either help you or help OFREG, but to get that issue sorted. Because the last thing we want is one organization or one entity or others blocking that progress from the island achieving what it is that I think we should all be working towards.
Mr. Chair, on the point of clarity, are you saying how data link impacts Cable and Wireless?
No, yeah, in terms of, we have heard that other operators and other issues have raised the issue that there seemed to be some reluctance either on, I guess, the make-ready costs, all different kind of issues. CUC earlier basically said, I think it was like 5,000 poles that they needed to make ready in order to achieve certain things. And what we're trying to understand fully is what is it going to take in terms of all organizations come together to get those 5,000 poles or whatever the number of poles is ready, so at least the Cayman Islands can at least start positioning themselves. Because I mean, we're flat, we're not mountainous, we don't have some of the challenges other places have. And for us at this point, having the resources, the GDP, and the infrastructure that we should have, as we like to put ourselves as a top financial center, it's not there, at least in some parts of the country. In town it is, outside it is not. And this place is really small for us to not basically have it everywhere. So we're just trying to understand what the challenge is.
Well, from our perspective, Mr. Chair, and through you, from our perspective, our issues with, I shouldn't say issues, but the challenges we have with data link is where we do the laterals, because correctly so, we have underground conduits in many areas of the island, right? So all of our main cables tend to be underground, and we just do the lateral, so the service drops off of the poles to the homes. You distribute to the homes that way. We continue to build out. You know, the only areas that I have challenges in is areas where they plant new poles. In essence, take the old one out and put a new one in. That involves a make ready for me if I'm going on that pole, because what they do now is make ready for the other competitors that could go on the pole, right? So in areas where part I have my existing copper cables and they're just changing out the connections on the poles, I don't pay a make ready for those. What I do, but if they change the poles out to a new location, maybe the pole is too close to the road, as the Honorable Chair mentioned earlier, and they put a new pole in, then I would have to pay a make ready for that. So it not hamper me that much till roll my network out, because like I said, the core part of my network is on the ground. Where I do have difficulties in terms of deployment, delivery of the service is on more in the residential areas where part of can roll it out, or places that don't have conduits to them. And we got a good working relationship. We got a work group with DataLink that we work with monthly, and that's how we find to get things done. And they'll tell us when we're doing things wrong. And likewise, we'll tell them the areas that we need build out, and we continue to work like that. So I got a good relationship with them, and that works well for us. To answer the next part of your question is what would be needed to get this technology east. I guess this comes back to why we're here. OFREG need to get the other licensee, right, to live up to their obligations. When we relinquished or surrendered our monopoly, it was on that premise that that would happen. 15 years on, and we're still talking about pushing east. The other competitors are still talking about pushing east, the other licensee. 10 years ago, DataLink didn't have the rules that they have in place now in terms of safeties on the pole, so they could have been there. 8 years ago, they could have been there. These issues that we're talking about now have raised their head, I think, since sitting in the House a couple of years ago when the Premier spoke about getting fibers around the island. So I guess from our perspective, OFREG need to hold the licensee to account. They have to make these other licensee accountable for not pushing east.
The mobile market was liberalized. Sure.
Just a follow-up on this whole thing. The ICTA law, right, currently requires that you share that stuff that you have going east with other providers. So what is the problem? Is there a problem between the sharing, why the other ones are not getting out there, or?
Well, from a flow perspective, we have infra-sharing contracts, Mr. Chair. We have infra-sharing contracts with all of the licensees currently. There are different areas that they're using our conduits on the side of the island. We also have site sharing with Digicel as well. So, you know, pretty much anytime they come to us, there's a regulation in place for that. And once procedures are followed, proper procedures are followed, we have no problem honoring that. We have right now in front of us a determination with OFREG where somebody put the wrong size subducting in our conduits, and OFREG is to make a determination on the way forward. So we're currently awaiting that decision from OFREG right now. But no, we haven't had applications for service in our conduits in Northside or East End or even Frankstown or even Bordentown. It's you know, if they do apply for it and there's space available, we will give it. Yeah.
It is basically an economic decision by their part. They haven't even applied to you to use it, but they're telling us they can't get out there. But the truth seems to be that the reason they're not coming out there is because we don't have the kind of density they have on 7 Mile Beach and around Georgetown. While their original license says that they were supposed to roll out to the eastern districts, the farthest point, within a specific period of time. And I don't, in answer to questions in this legislative assembly, nobody has done that. And the question remains, why is they being allowed to get away with not doing it?
Well, Mr. Chair, through you, I understand the sentiments of your comment you made. We continue to do it, right? We continue to build out in the Sister Islands as well. And, you know, so Flow Cable and Wireless continues to actually meet that part of our obligation, not from a regulatory perspective, but from a customer perspective. And I like to say that we live here too, right? And, you know, that's why we went with the LTE Advance in our investments last year. The whole island now have our LTE Advanced service, which is upgrades to the current LTE service that we had. Not just expanding the footprint that everybody can get LTE, but they can get higher speeds on the LTE, which is the mobile network, and we'll continue to do that. Our subsea cables, we continue to upgrade them, right? You know, this CJFS, we're always looking at upgrading that. The Maya 1 cable, there's a working group each year that goes through to look to upgrade. The upgrades going on now in other segments of the cable. 2016, we upgraded the Maya 1 cable, and you know, this working group keep looking at the different segments that need to be upgraded based on demand and continue to do that. I guess one would say too, and I just brought the subsea cables in, is that people wouldn't continue to upgrade it if the system was old, right? And the working life of these cables will continue, and we'll continue to upgrade them as necessary. You know, so I mean, our expansion, whether it's pushing east or pushing off island, we continue to invest in our networks to do that.
So you're constantly upgrading the terminals for the CGFS and Maya 1 cable locally in order to provide services, and then this idea that somehow these cables are going to magically be useless in 2023 is not really founded in technology.
To answer your question, yes. We'll continue to use them until, well, for the foreseeable future, right? And beyond. You know, technology is the way it is now, and just so I think I'll touch on the fiber optics piece of it. The way technology is now, especially with fiber, it's dependent on end equipment, and we just continue to upgrade that. One of the things we're doing with the Maya 1, you know, some people might have or have requirements for larger capacity links off island. Currently, we sell 10 gig links. They might have 100 gig link in the future. So we'll keep upgrading those terminal equipment in order for that to happen. If there comes to the, well, I should say the repeaters on the ground, let's say for the Maya 1, if that needs to be changed or upgraded in any way, you know, the consortium, which we are one member of, will actually do those upgrades. In terms of the CGFS cable, that cable as it stands right now don't have repeaters. It's probably, at the time when it was put in, it had the longest on-the-sea link without a repeater from Kimmenbrack to Jamaica. So all of the electronics is on the ground. And in 2018-19, we did a 100 gig upgrade to that. And then still not at capacity. So we'll continue to upgrade those links as necessary. And no, it is not something that is will impact the growth of telecommunications in Cayman.
Sorry, just on the undersea cable on the Maya 1 and the CGFS, are any other licensees connected to that directly, or everyone has to go through your organization?
Currently, they would have to go through the cable and wireless, but we have, there have been some applications to do that, to connect directly to the cable. The building in which it's in, when it was actually constructed, was not designed for multi-hosting, if you will, or hoteling of the services. But we have given alternative options to the people that have applied. Either A, you can get connectivity by putting your own meet point in the area, but some of those have not been accepted, some of those have not been accepted by the other licensee. So it's alternate. We give an alternative connections to the building.
Okay. With regards to going back just on the whole telephone sharing infrastructure, 15, 16 years ago, we liberalized the mobile market. Did we ever liberalize the fixed line market? Because they are both mobile and they're fixed. Has that market ever been liberalized?
Well, when you say fixed, it's a fixed voice we're talking?
Yeah, but basically, the fixed line, the fixed voice, the mobile and the fixed. I remember there's a big hoopla in terms of all mobile liberalization. But the other side of it, and I think that, and the reason why I asked that question, because I think that's the part that has been affecting the Go East initiative, because these guys came in, made a ton of money on mobile, and they said, to hell with the rest of everything else. You know, we're fine just being a mobile company, but the license required them to offer a lot more. And here we are now, 15, 16 years later, and the question is how much of them have expanded past just the mobile liberalization, and that's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay. What I will do with this question, because I want to pass that on to my regulatory guy, gentleman, Mr. David. David?
Yeah, good afternoon. So the retail pricing regulations don't apply to any operator other than Flow. So the regime is contained within an annex of our license. And unfortunately, that regime is largely unchanged since liberalization. The same retail pricing regulations that were adopted in 2003 are still largely in place today. As Mr. Tatum indicated, OFREG has initiated a review of this regime to determine whether changes should be made. We believe that is long overdue and should have been taken place many years ago. Another unfortunate aspect of this is that they initiated this review 3 years ago, and it still hasn't concluded. So we're eager to make changes to this regime, and we think it is warranted. But it is part and parcel of this license reform process that is still outstanding for our offering.
Just to my understanding, because I do understand that with that market not being liberalized, it also affects your ability to bundle some products that could literally bring prices down and bring other things down. So, I mean, have you guys done an analysis in terms of if that market were to be liberalized and you were to be able to bundle many of your services now? Because I think everyone can agree that everyone had 15, 16 years to play catch up to cable and wireless at the time as a dominant player. Now, I think it's time now, and I hate to say what competition wins, but at this point, if we were to push to get that liberalized, and you guys were able to bundle a lot of your different services now, what could that do in terms of the prices to the consumer?
David, you want to take that? Or you want me to take that?
I can take a one reaction to that, is that liberalization would provide cable and wireless the opportunity to experiment in the types of bundles and prices and different services that they would like to offer that they can't do today under the existing regime that is not really geared for a dynamic market in which operators experiment to see what types of services are successful, what types of services customers don't really appreciate. So I think that the liberalization, what you would see much more dynamic process and many more different types of services and experimentation with them.
So, okay, so basically then we need to get the full liberalization of the telecoms market, because I don't think the public recognizes that the entire telecoms market isn't liberalized, just a portion of it. So I think it's important now for us to start pushing for the full liberalization of the telecoms market, so at least we can start seeing better bundles and better prices and hopefully better service.
Yes, that's true, yes. So that's the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman, through you. What, as you know, everyone complains that they're paying for 20, but no one can ever see 20. They're seeing 12, 14, if that much. What, is there anything government can do to help you as a provider give the people what they are paying for? Because they're paying for these packages, and our complaint that we get from our constituents is that it's never up to speed what the companies are telling us. Is there anything we can do to make it easier for you to give them what they're due?
Mr. Chair, through you, right now I would say there's not much the government can do on that side to make that happen, right? Like I said, it's a bunch of different things that determine speed in the homes. So each case got to be done on a case-by-case basis. What I would say, to expand on that a bit, when we're rolling out our fiber equipment or fiber optics network, and I know this to be true for the other providers as well, the costs of our installs are crazy ridiculous. It's $1,000 per customer, roughly speaking. That's what we're looking at with equipment and labor, because we got to run the fibers in the house, so on and so forth. Years ago, many years ago, when we were I can say the Central Planning Authority put things in place, Cat5 cabling was the thing. You know, you had to run telephone cables within the house, and right now, I don't think that's a part of the law for the new fiber optic systems that we're putting in. So I guess one of the things I would say to that is it would be great if we could put that a part of the law, that we get the fiber optic cables in the building when we come there to reduce the cost. Now, it'll be reducing costs to me, but it will also allow me to actually become more innovative with what I do and converting the customers a lot quicker, right? Because if it's costing me, if I pass 1,500 homes in a year, it can cost me 1,000 times, you know, that, right, which is 1.5 million just to connect them before I make $1. So, you know, we could, in that sense, we could reduce some costs there, which will allow us to pass more homes and expand our fiber networks faster. And I mean, just put it out there, you know, get due to concessions in some areas, and maybe this is where the government can help us. We could expand our fiber networks even faster in the areas where there's no fiber now. So I mean, we are willing to work and, you know, sit down with you to come up with solutions, because like I said, we live here too. And but I mean, there are some ideas that are just thrown off the cuff, but we're willing to work on any solution that would make it quicker and faster for customers. But right now, I guess the large one is Airbot is connected wireless, and I think it's an education piece that we need to let people know what limits speeds. With all the smart homes and every day people buying more phones and iPads and computers, the more go on the network, the slower the speed will appear if you're not on the right package. And I think from listening to these hearings over the last couple of weeks, I get where you guys are coming from, and I share, you know, similar interests that we're going to make some changes to improve the perception of customers, indeed your constituents. So we'll be working and making sure that happen with improvements on Wi-Fi technology. We've started looking at how we can do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Do you offer that service to customer? You would send people out to their house and advise them on what would be the best to buy based on how many instruments they have, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, we don't offer the Wi-Fi service in the house at this time, other than what comes with the gateway modems that we use. But it's a space that we want to get in because, again, it reduces our truck roll and customer complaints. So it don't make sense for me to bring the food if I don't bring the forks, right? I got, because you get your hand messed up. So
We country people, we'll find a way.
so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it an end-to-end solution. That's what we're working on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, first of all, I wish to say good afternoon to the witness. Thank him and his team for coming. Certainly to the witness, my once upon a time old neighbor. Good to see you. Mr. Chairman, through you, I've asked this question certainly of all of the telecoms, and for completeness, I will ask it of the witness. When we heard from the executive director for ICT at Ofreg, he gave testimony that suggested that the reason why broadband and internet service is not widely distributed to the eastern districts by all of the available carriers, both the original founders, I call it, Flow from the cable and wireless era, and all of the competitors since the liberalization of the telecoms market. The executive director stated that it is not the new telecoms who are dragging their feet and breaking into or expanding their fiber network into the eastern districts, but is largely because their hands are tied, because those existing entities, original entities of CUC, vis-a-vis Datalink and Flow, are not willing to share their infrastructure that allows some of the newcomers to tag on, if you will, and build out their also services to provide those in the eastern districts with choice. We heard from Datalink earlier this morning. I wonder if Flow likewise agrees with the executive director of Ofreg that Flow is standing in the way of broadband telecom build-out by other competitors.
Mr. Chair, through you, I answered that one before it was asked, but I'll answer you again. No, Flow is not.
Mr. Chairman, certainly I don't wish to waste the committee's time. If the question was asked in my absence, I don't need to hear it again. I'll simply read it in the record. So it's not necessary. Thank you. Okay. Apologies.
No problem.
All right. Just a quick question. I remember years ago being part of a regional group that there was now this capital review board where there'd be one set capital budget, and then the different regions would apply to that board to basically make their case as to what capital projects to undertake. I remember sitting there many times listening to Cayman compete against Antigua, Anguilla. At that time, everybody was fighting for ADSL money. That's how old it is. But what is the capital process right now today as it exists in terms of the Liberty Group, in terms of like how would you guys determine how capital is allocated?
I'm going to pass that on to Gio.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we, as senior leadership team, would assess our requirements on an annual basis just pre the budget season. And we would list those requirements in terms of what our strategic drives would be for the upcoming short-term and long-term developments and strategic decisions. And we would make those submissions to the group, and then they would then decipher and what the massive or what the major pool would then come back and then allocate accordingly. And then there would be numerous rounds of budget discussions where we would justify our actions and our submissions, and then we would come to a mutual agreement.
Thanks very much. The reason I asked that question, because one of the things that kind of jumped out at me, just looking at your SEC filings, and this is consolidated for the entire group. I noticed on page 11.8 or 11.8 going into 11.9 that speaks to the financial performance. They had made a note that the thing was worth highlighting on 11.8, decrease in residential mobile interconnect equipment sales and other, and they use the letter E to kind of explain that further. And then when I look at the letter E, it basically says that this decrease is primarily attributable to, one, lower interconnect revenue, primarily associated with A, lower volumes at Panama, and B, reduced rates at other cable and wireless markets, and two, lower handset sales, primarily a result of A, decreased volumes in our Cayman Islands operations, the Bahamas, and other CNW markets, and B, customers purchasing lower priced products in the Bahamas and other cable and wireless markets. And I noticed on a consolidated level for the Liberty Group that they, for the last 2 years, for 2018 and 2019, that there was actually an accumulated, there was basically a net loss. And then I noticed also that there's also an accumulated loss that has been there for the group for quite some time. Now, the reason this kind of jump out at me is that I also recall that Digicel, I think back in April, I'd even filed for bankruptcy. And earlier their advisor to the board had basically said that they were able to restructure their debt, I think to the tune of 1.5 or 1.6 billion less of the $7+ billion that they owe. The first thing that kind of jump out to me is that when I look at the two largest telecoms provider on island, one Digicel, the other being Flow, both having to some extent businesses that are basically struggling financially to some extent. This may not be to the Cayman market, but I'm just looking overall as a group. Then it questions, in other words, the appetite of the group as a whole in terms of capital, in terms of investment in capital and everything else. And while we do recognize that our infrastructure is behind, I can't help but wonder where the appetite comes from now with companies that are basically having their own financial challenges. I mean, even intensified by COVID, what is the appetite then to invest in Cayman? Well, I'm interested in investment in Cayman, and that's the reason why I asked about the capital investment in both companies over the last X number of years. And then more importantly, what it is that we can expect from the capital investment going forward. And that's one of the things that I really think that we need to, I just like to get a commitment or an idea from the Liberty Group in terms of the forward investment in Cayman to get that infrastructure up to the world class that we want it to be. I mean, is the appetite there? Because in the grand scheme of the Liberty Group, we're actually quite small. I mean, looking at the overall group, I mean, and I recognize that Cayman has to compete with other places with more volume, bigger markets, bigger margins, better margins for that same capital dollar. I mean, what is it that would make Cayman be more, I guess, lucrative to say, you know what, let's put that capital in Cayman as opposed to Jamaica or Chile or Panama or elsewhere?
Yes, I'll pass this on to Mr. Rob.
For the record, name's Rob Mayo-Smith. I'm a commercial business consultant for Flow and Cable and Wireless. I think when the group looks at its investments, you know, Cayman's a great business. We hold our own in terms of profitability. We're not as big as some of the other markets, but surprisingly, some of our smallest, you know, businesses can be just as economic as our larger ones. And so we also recognise that there's a demand here, a hunger obviously has been put forward by this committee, and we, as Mr. Tatum said, we're committed as well to continuing to invest into Cayman and to, from our perspective, continuing to fight for that investment. So if the question is, will we continue to invest? Yes, we'll continue to roll out fibre. Will we continue to bring the newest innovations, 5G, etc., into the future? All those types of innovations it's part of our motto to be innovative as part of the LLA group.
As a follow-up then, if we were to push, because obviously, I mean, ultimately we take political will. If we were to push to get the full liberalization of the telecom markets, that would basically allow you guys to bundle and basically increase market share, increase profitability. Would those kind of decisions incentivize you guys to basically invest more in Cayman to basically max out your bottom line and, I mean, max out the use of your infrastructure?
Through the chair, look, I think liberalisation, as David said, helps in the overall our ability to put bundles together. So, for example, when we talked about a superhero bundle last year, I think part of the promotion that we had initially, we wanted to have fixed calling as part of that, and because of the regulation that's around that, we're not really allowed to, David, correct me if I'm wrong, provide discounts on our fixed servicing by bundling it. So it does allow us, as David said, to be more creative. It would help. And does that help us with our future investments? I guess, you know, the more competitive we can be, that generally helps us with our investment decisions. So yes, I think the answer is yes.
One question.
If I could, Chairman, interrupt for a minute.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that the liberalization measures you mentioned would be helpful, but I would add another point that the fees that the ICT sector pays to OFREG are another factor that I think should be given consideration, and that is I think as Mr. Famoa indicated in his testimony last week, that the ICT sector is fully funded. It's not only fully funded, but they generate over a $6 million surplus each year, as he indicated. Flow and all the other ICT operators pay just under 7% of their revenue to OFREG in these fees, which is a very large amount. If you look at what we pay elsewhere in the Caribbean, it's closer to 1%. If you look at what CUC pays, it's closer, it pays to OFREG. In fees is closer to 1%. And I think the burden that's borne by the ICT sector is an impediment to the investment I think that you want to see in the increased competition and improvements. So I think that's something that would help and should be given serious consideration, is the reallocation of the funding and fees that is borne by various sectors that OFREG regulates.
So I think just to put that in context, I mean, going back to the answer to liberalization, there were also, one at a time, a lot of concessions being given to the company. Because, first of all, let's put CUC in context. I mean, when you burn in 30-odd million gallons of fuel, and the government is making 25 cents duty on every single gallon, plus what it is that CUC look at, I mean, looking at the overall contribution to the government coffers and the countries, it has to be looked in that context. And I think equally so is the same thing in the telecoms industry. Now, I think the fees that royalties for government is, I think it's 6 or 8% of gross adjusted revenues or something like that, revenues minus direct costs. The thing about it is this, and this has been one of the challenges, and I think if that is something that, I can't speak for the government, but I can speak for at least some of the members of this House. For us to entertain that, it would also come with a caveat that if someone wants to go on a massive expansion run of, say, $50, $60, $70 million worth of investment in infrastructure, over, say, a period of 3 to 5 years, and ask that during that time that fee or something be reduced to X amount. I think those are the kind of incentive that I would encourage the government, and if the government were to look at, I as a legislator would not oppose, because you still need some level of incentivization to get the infrastructure up. But unlike CUC, where their license is set, where based on the asset that they invest, they'll get a certain return on that asset. Thus the reason why in CUC license, for them to even increase their capital spend, they'll have to get permission from OFREG. Part of the criticism that myself and others in this legislature have on the telecom side is, unlike CUC in terms of where we can see, and going back to the earlier testimony between 2010 and 2018, we have seen their production to consumption ratio move from 91% to 98%, which is, I would basically say, world-class, considering that it is now between 93 and 95% in terms of what the industrial standard is. CUC is at 98%. So they're tied in to some extent on their return on their investment, also as a public traded company like yourself. The other flip side is on the telecom side is that when you do combine the net profits of the telecoms company, both Cable and Wireless and Digicel, if memory serves me right, it actually is more than CUC. And from that standpoint, the question is, and that's the reason why I asked the CapEx question, is in terms of what in terms of investment has been made, because there's a lot of money still being made on old equipment that has already been fully depreciated, fully paid off already, that is literally at this point just making money. And that has always been the issue for us, or the challenge is, how do we put policies in place to incentivize companies to invest, but at the same time not penalize? And I think that's where the trade-off needs to be. And ultimately, I would very much like to see, to some extent, that most other companies within the telecom within the off-reg sector move to that kind of RCAM type base model where once you start investing in capital and in the future, then we can start looking at other ways to incentivize you to get a certain return on your capital or your return on your investment. But we can't sit down now in the present form to look at the profits that are being generated by some of these entities, look at their the capital infrastructure and their continued capital investment, and believe then that we're going to basically allow them to continue. So this is where the balance in that come from. And this is one of the things that we're open to get at the end of this session, is to put in a regulatory framework that encourages investment, but at the same time allow your shareholders to have a reasonable rate of return on that investment comparable to market. I would like to see that kind of CUC concept roll out to others. But let's be honest, we have had guys in the ICT space that have been in this business a long time, still using old equipment. And I mean, you guys can look at even some of your competitors and know that they have not spent the money that you have spent, but at the same time still cherry picking and picking a market share. And it is unfair to companies that actually invest. And that is not the kind of model that we want in Cayman, because that does not encourage business to want to come here and do business. So it can't be a situation. You guys are stuck with a legacy system, a legacy infrastructure. Part of it is still not liberalized, and it is unfair to you guys 15, 16 years after that someone comes in and take the best part of the market and leave you guys with the most expensive to turn off the light. That's unfair. And for us, what we need to do, and that's the reason why I raised the point to begin with, is at this stage of the game now, the full market needs to be fully liberalized, and we need to look, and I would encourage the government and my colleagues in here to start looking at ways now to incentivize companies that say, you know what, we want to make that infrastructural investment, we want to make that capital investment, well, here's what we can do for you. And I think that's ultimately the model that we need to get to in order for this to work. But you can't come inside here, drop an old piece of equipment and ride it out for 10, 15 years, make a ton load of money off for it, and then complain about the ICT fees. No, either way, because barring that ICT fees, that's the only way we make some money off of some companies. Your guy, I mean, Cable and Wireless, still at above 90% Caymanian staff. Some of your competitors have never hit that number from the time they've been around. So for companies that do well by Cayman and Caymanians, they need to be incentivized, they need to be rewarded for that. It can't be the same playing field. And that, I think, is something that I think for us inside here as policymakers need to be looking at a different level. And I can tell you, when Ali does come back tomorrow, it will be a situation of what we need to do to get the full liberalization of the market. I want to see the competition. I want to see the bundle. I want to see the price come down. And if somebody loses market share, tough. Go invest, go and do what you need to do.
Mr. Chair, through you, and right now we are entertaining, or I learned through the recent hearings that we are entertaining a third licensee in a liberalized side of the market, which is the mobile market, right? I guess the point that I make in follow-up to your statement is that the one area where we have liberalization taking place and everything working fairly well with prices and the likes. We're about to open yet to a third provider. So I'm still waiting on our license to be renewed. So it's a comment.
One of the, talking about the fixed line, is it because the fixed line is not liberated why people still have to pay for a fixed line phone rental every month when they don't have no phone?
Yes, sir.
Why?
It's a part of the fixed line is delivered, I should say the broadband is delivered over our copper lines, and that's a part of the product, the tariff. But David, you want to expand on that? It's the fixed line tied to the
I
broadband.
think I don't know if I can expand beyond that. My understanding is that over our fiber network, that's not a requirement. And the quicker we transition to fiber, the faster that will go away. But yeah, there is cost recovery that would require us to charge for the fixed line under the DSL, provided copper.
So that is part of the 1960s infrastructure and also that you still make money on because you're running broadband on it now?
Well, it's not, Mr. Chairman, it's not 1960s. Like I said, we've upgraded, we brought our loop closer to you. We shortened the local loop. So portions of the area of there, we have MSANs, multi-service access nodes, and the copper lines extends from there, but fiber into them. So it's, yeah, the network is a part of the PANs. I think I heard that earlier in the discussion, pots and pans, but this is a part of the new network, it's PANs. Yeah, plain old telephone service. Yeah, it's a telecom acronym.
Just kind of bringing it back to the regulatory environment itself. I mean, having now 16 years post-liberalization, we have seen prices drop on the mobile side, but one of the things that has been, still have been my bonnet, has been that interconnect rate. Now, I think, I know at one point it was like 18.5 cents when it started out. What is that number down to today now?
I'm going to defer that question to Mr. David. I'm not clear on that one. Interconnect rates, David.
On the prices, I would have to check. I don't have that information.
This is where I think you guys are moving now. Is it a FLIRIC model or Lyric or FLIRIC or something like that now? Where it becomes a sliding scale or something?
David, I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. Are you referring to the
interconnect rate
that,
between, the mobile interconnect rate between Cable and Wireless and Digicel, Flow and Digicel and the other areas? That interconnect rate that you would charge other providers?
Oh, okay, yeah. So that was, they revised those rates in 2000, I want to say 15 or 14, or inconsistent with a long-run incremental cost model. And so I don't know the exact level of the interconnection rates, but they were reduced at that time.
I think I'd heard at one point a number being batted around like 9 cents or 10 cents or something like that. Well, I can confirm this with Ali tomorrow, but that's fine. But one of the things I've been curious about is going back to when it was 18.5 CI cents an interconnect rate. I could never understand what was driving that rate to be so much when bearing in mind to terminate a call and say the MCI network or so was like 1 cent, 2 cents US versus 22 cents US for a local interconnect call. I mean, what it is that drives that interconnect rate between the mobile carriers to be so expensive compared to terminating on a foreign carrier?
Yeah, so I'll take a shot at that. The interconnection rate, they've been coming down dramatically over the period of liberalization. I think at the outset, the interconnection rates that were established were not based on cost, or were not based on a cost model that is going to produce these low rates that you would find under what I'll call the LYRIC, the long interconnection cost models. And so the rates were initially very high because there was not the implementation of LYRIC. But now that has considered best practice within the industry, you're seeing interconnection rates come down dramatically. I think Cayman is included in that. Their rates have come down. They were reduced when they were revised in, I think it was 2013 or 14 timeframe.
Okay, well,
So the issue of I mean, I think you're talking about international calling, and those are subject to a different regime called settlement rates. Those are not regulated by OFREG.
The reason I ask is if I was to call my colleague from West Bay North on his cell phone, because he uses a different carrier than I, that cost, the call of that cost would actually be, well, not from a revenue or whatever standpoint, but actually just on a cost. Versus if I was to pick up the phone and call my cousin in, say, Florida, that cost is actually cheaper than it is for me to call Mr. Bush that's sitting 3 feet away from me at least. I mean, and that's one of the things I could never understand, where that local interconnect rate or that cost was far more than what it was to terminate or to make an international call in terms of costs. So the question in all of that then, with the LYRIC model now, have we reached a point now where the cost of calling another person next door on another network is now competitive to the cost of, say, calling somebody overseas in, say, Miami or whatever on another network?
I can say across the flow markets in the Caribbean, that is a truthful statement or truthful generalization. In Cayman specifically, I think that the interconnection rates were last reviewed some time ago, and they are due to be reevaluated and updated. That would bring the rates down further. Those types of movements generally take the domestic rates closer to what you would see for some of the international calling you referenced. So if OFREG were to pursue interconnection review, then you would see some of that improvement, I believe.
The reason why I'm touching on it is, I mean, ICT, well, OFREG makes its money as a percentage of gross adjusted revenues. Your revenues minus your direct costs. If that direct cost remains very high or skewed to one particular provider as opposed to the next, then they, in essence, would have higher costs, which in other words would mean lower adjusted revenues or, gross revenues, which would then be a lower fee being payable to the regulator. Versus if the cost were to come down, and maybe revenues may come down a little bit. I don't think revenue is going to come down as much as the cost will. It would at least mean more money going to OFREG in terms of the fees as opposed to the current arrangement that we have right now. Because, I mean, as it stands right now, what is the expense to you is fine. You can actually make it back in terms of you're paying less royalties. But for the person who has a lower expenses, because what's expenses to you on the interconnect side is revenues for someone else. They, in other words, then will pretty much end up paying, basically, you'd end up paying a lower fee, and they'd end up paying a higher fee. And I think that is one of the imbalances within the market, and also a barrier even to new entrants or incentives for people to basically come in and take a look at it. But that's fine. We can take it up with the regulator tomorrow. That's fine. We can leave that there. That's fine.
Is one of the, I understand that there are houses on the east and the north side that fiber crosses the house on the street, but they're not connected. Is one of the reasons why the houses are not connected is because the demands for people on that fiber line that you've already hooked up is so high that you're worried about reducing it even to them less by hooking up the local people in between?
No, well, just understand, Mr. Chairman, just understanding the network in itself. We do have fiber that runs, that connects our exchanges and our cell sites, but it's a different type of fiber. We use our GPON fiber for residential connections. So certain areas in East End where we run GPON fiber, which, you know, the extent of the Queens Highway down by the Health City area, considered not a part of the East End District. We do have fiber in there. General connectivity in the Central East End area, we have the fiber to the curb solution. So I don't have fiber strung on a pole, passing someone that having poor speeds. I mean, just thinking about it as you talk, and being from East End myself, I don't have fiber part. You know, if someone is having a problem, if we have issues, we will open the fiber up on the GPON side to do that. I know right now we're looking to do some stuff, like I said, where people are having some issues on the Queens Highway, and it's just a small fiber drop that we're looking to do in that area, and because they have problems over there with lightning and all of that as well. So, you know, again, it's not an economics thing that we're looking at in terms of connecting the rich homes and leaving the others out. You know, our customers pay us, and they pay us well. What we're talking about here, as we discussed it earlier, is $200 for 200 megs and TV. If I can get that from any customer, that would be good. If I can get, right now our lower plans are in the $80 range. So the price disparity is much when you're talking one or two customers, right? So, you know, my goal and our goal indeed is to actually improve customer service and, you know, make sure we have a product that's competitive in the marketplace. So I don't know if that answers your question, but any place that we can put fiber in any greenfield areas, if there are new housing estates, we're going to build that out with fiber because it don't make sense to put copper on there because of the issues we could have with copper down the road.
But just for edification of the constituents and on the area, for instance, now in the Heartland area where you say you just put in fiber, are you going to go to your customers there and offer them the fiber, or are you going to replace it as a routine, or do they have to make an application if they want to get fiber?
So what we've been doing in the Heartland area, like I said, we working with Data Link to get permissions to do that. So I just use an area that we just converted, which is in the Woodland by Breadfruit Walk area. So as soon as we converted and put, or not converted, we put fiber in that area, the new housing estate there. What we do is canvass the homes and customers in that area to see if they want the service and find out what speeds they're looking for, and we actually connect them up. We did Savannah Acres last year. Some people are still on copper. Some people are on fiber in there because they wanted to take our TV product. So in essence, we prioritized those that wanted to take the TV product, but we are part of, and coming back to the initial question you asked about the CapEx, part of getting the CapEx is show increased penetration on our fiber footprint. So that's exactly what we need to do. So self-governance is that I can't leave people off and continue to operate two separate networks. It's not economical feasible. So what we got to do is also convert those customers. So when we do come into the Heartland area, we will be canvassing the homes and seeing who wants to upgrade, because some people may just have a normal telephone line, which works happily on the copper. And as I mentioned before, it's a $1,000 investment for each one I convert. So I will definitely go in and, especially those customers, if they have faults, poor experiences with our product, they will be converted. They'll be the first to be converted.
Mr. Tatum, I'd like to thank you and your team for coming in and appearing before the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and to the members of the Honorable House, have a good evening.
We'll take a five-minute break before we call in the next group. and invite the deputy sergeant to bring in the witnesses. I think there's 4.
I swear by Almighty God that evidence I shall give to this Honourable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's it. Thank you.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this Honourable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this Honourable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you all for coming. Mr. Randa White, Mr. James Burke, Randa Marion, sorry, boy, I tell you. Wow, I mean, long day. Mr. Randa Marion, Mr. James Bergstrom, and Mr. Chris Bergstrom. Thank you all very much for coming, sir. As you will have been made aware, we're dealing with the Office of the Auditor General's report on the efficiency and effectiveness of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office, commonly called OFREG. It was done in June 2020. And we had the people who do the regulating in last week, and in attempt at fairness and objectivity, we decided to invite the people who were being regulated so we could find out what concerns they have with the Office of OFREG, whether it is offering assistance or it's an impediment to you being able to give the best service to your customers. So the only rule is that the first time you answer a question, speak into the mic, please give your full name and your position. And that's just for it, so it'll be recorded properly in the Hansards of the LE. Because anything you say here will be recorded forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Ms. Annie's words are still here. So I'd invite Mr. Chris to start the question in our.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. And firstly, I want to thank Mr. Randy for returning to the committee. Members and the listening public may recall that he was here, I think, a while back, enlightening some of the issues and the challenges that they were having. And it would be curious now to see, since your last testimony, what progress has been made with regards to getting your organization moving forward. As you can see, the old fiber issue has become, I would guess, something topical for the public. I think it's important. I think we all can agree that having Cayman be positioned as a world-class infrastructure, especially when it comes down to telecoms, when we do rely on tourism and financial services as our bread and butter, is key to our survival. And with that said, I would just like to get just pretty much a brief update in terms of, since appearing here the last time, the challenges you raised back then, and then what has been done since, or what progress have been made, if any, with regards to making sure that we get more competition in this section, in this sector. Thanks.
Aaron, Managing Director of C3. Mr. Chairman, my name is Randy Marin, the Managing Director of C3. To answer Mr. Sanders' question, we've filed nine different disputes, and seven different disputes. Within those disputes, there's multiple other disputes within that. When I was here last time, I think we had 2 decisions on a part of one dispute. None of those decisions really have borne any fruition. They've been done by the regulator, but I don't think anyone paid them any mind to adhere to them. I brought that up to the regulator up to a couple of days ago. Since then, we've filed numerous other disputes, and the Flo was here a few minutes ago, and I heard they said he had a dispute with one of the licensees. That's us, that's C3. That issue was that we've applied to get into their ducts from Shamrock to High Rock landing station where the Maya 1 is. We negotiated an agreement to put a 1.5-inch inner duct in there, and we have communications with them agreeing to that 1.5-inch duct. We ordered the duct to go in there, and then when we started, by the way, we paid $70,000 for the survey, paid $70,000 more to clear the ducts for Make Ready. And that was in 2018, I think, maybe a little longer than that. But they haven't cleared the ducts, and then they basically came back with this, that we're trying to install a 1.5-inch inner duct, and we'd only have permission for 1 inch. So we have a dispute in there. Inside of that is we try to get into the Maya 1 landing station, which have refused to give us access to. So it's not that us as licensees are not trying to expand our network, we're being blocked. That's the facts of the matter. These companies are I think the regulators lost sight of what they're supposed to be doing. They're not regulating the garbage dump here, they're regulating multi-billion dollar companies who are not going to easily give up their market share to someone like C3, who's a 100% Caymanian-owned company. So they're going to try to block us any way they can. We're the disruptor. We're the third wheel in the chain. And so that's the whole issue that we're running into here. It hasn't gotten any better, but I think it was really telling when Mr. Famous said in here that he lacks any regulatory attorneys. He should have access to a fleet of them, because they're the ones that got to deal with these disputes. They need to properly investigate them and resolve them in 4 months, not 80 months, 82 months that we're seeing in here. So it's cost us dearly. We're a greenfield, meaning we had no revenue streams like anyone on other providers here had revenue streams that they could depend on, whether they had access to it, whether they had service or not. We had to build as quickly as possible to deploy our GPON network as quickly as possible, and that hasn't happened. And it's not only just on the underground cables; it's the ones going aerial as well. We got disputes with Datalink too. We got them with Logic. We got them with all of them, besides Digicel. Sorry, on the poles. And
you sound like a very disputable guy.
Yeah, well, we've got a job to do.
I want to clarify that for the listening public, you see, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't. The people might misinterpret disputes. I think what I need to say is that you have complained to the off-reg about interactions with other companies, and it is Ofreg's responsibility to
Mr. Chair, there
resolve those complaints and
absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
just for the matter of the listening public.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Because
That's what I should do.
the biggest thing we're trying to do here, or one of the things that we hope to accomplish in these hearings, is public education for everybody. You know?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Mr.
Austin?
Chairman, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly want to again formally welcome the witnesses and thank them for appearing before this committee on a very important subject as the one we're dealing with this afternoon. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the witness just used very strong language when he stated that they, as a newcomer to the telecoms market, are being, quote unquote, blocked from expanding their broadband, internet, and otherwise choice, particularly to the eastern districts. We have heard testimony before this committee over the course of the last 2 weeks, specifically from the executive director of ICT from Ofreg, who stated that with regards to your challenges with data link, depending on how you say it, they agree with you, and they even challenged data link in court and lost.
Mr. Chairman, I was lost on a technicality. They hadn't filed they're supposed to do their dispute resolution in a draft form first and issue it to the parties. They skipped that step, so that was, it was on that technicality. They didn't follow that one step, so they took them to court on that.
Going to do it back over?
I would assume that they have to, I think, because the dispute hasn't been resolved. I think all they've got to do is reissue the dispute in a draft form, which I think they've done. We had no comments on it, as a C3 had no comments. I don't know why the Logic Data Link did, but then from there they should reissue those, so I don't know what's the status of that. But if you don't have a regulatory attorney in-house, who's going to do the job?
Well, thank you. I thank the witness for that. Obviously, that is different than what we got from Ofreg. They stated that very clearly in testimony that they agreed with C3, challenged it in court, but lost the argument.
On a technicality.
All right. All right. Let's bypass what Ofreg did or didn't do. Let's talk about your claim that Data Link and Flow are not allowing you to, for lack of a better word, piggyback on existing infrastructure for a fee in order to expand to the eastern districts. We asked the question specifically of Data Link and their subsidiary owner company, CUC, this morning, to which the evidence suggested was they have not refused. However, they have said specifically the providers, and I only presume they're talking about C3, have not been willing to pay the make-ready fees, which average at about $1,000 per pole, nor are they prepared to accept the connection fee, which is between $7 to $10, I think it was a day or a quarter or something to that effect. But Data Link has simply stated their evidence was that the new provider, C3 or otherwise, aren't prepared to accept the make-ready costs. How do you respond to that?
Mr. Chairman, we've paid millions of dollars in make-ready costs. The dispute wasn't on that portion of it, but I think it should be. We should probably have another dispute because the make-ready charges have grown astronomically since we started started on South Sound and went Walker's Road building east, and they will continue to go up. The make-ready for us on a pole is running right now about $800 for us, and I share between us and Logic, so it's about $1,600 a pole. The issue that isn't so much the poles now. They've got mid-span poles that have now added cost to us. It is a cost to actually go. What we do, how we look at it is, it's a cost across a home pass. That is now. So basically, we may pay, for instance, I'll use this. For the area of Newlands, we just paid $1.1 million, $1.52 million to do make ready in the Newlands area. Now, that's our portion, so Logic would have paid their 50% of that, so that's $2 million worth of make ready in that area. We crossed in that area 2,360 homes. Now, that's a lot denser than when you start going east. It's going to be homes farther apart, so the homes past is going to start getting more and more, getting higher and higher. It's going to get to the point where, can we even afford to continue? I mean, we've been building since 2012. We've got to Newlands. Mr. Chairman, I have no idea when we're going to get to Northside. That's a long ways. But that's the issues you're getting into. I think government has to look at solving that issue, whether they come up with some kind of rural plan, because Caymanians need to have access to broadband. But the barriers of continuing is just going to get to the point where we can't build.
Two questions. The first question is, recognizing your challenges to piggyback on existing infrastructure and the millions that you have spent and the very little progress that arguably you and I would admit has been made, why don't you direct those millions into your own infrastructure and get the job done perhaps in half the time?
Mr. Chairman, C3 has a license to construct its own poles. We've submitted 2 applications and 2 test areas to build our own poles. Neither one of them was approved. They had to go to INRA. I assume they had to go to CUC to get sign off. Both of those were submitted, and neither one was approved. Since that time, CUC had done make ready in that area, and we've paid to attach on those poles.
A comment was received certainly throughout the course of these 2 weeks from a member of the public who's obviously listening to these proceedings much like you have been. And a statement was made that attaching fiber optic cables to telephone poles in the Cayman Islands in this day and age is short-sighted. One hurricane comes along, as did Hurricane Ivan, and not only have you lost your electricity and your telephone network, but arguably you've lost your broadband and internet as well. Is there a reason why C3, Logic, and some of the new players on the market are looking to go above ground by way of poles instead of perhaps underground, which seems to be the wave of the future and certainly much more secure in a jurisdiction ravaged by the annual risk of hurricane?
Mr. Chairman, that's the entire reason why we applied to go into the flow ducts that run all the way from, run all around the island. And we wanted to put our feeder fiber in the inner ducts underground from Georgetown to the Maya 1 landing station. We've applied to go in, we've applied for survey costs to go to Rum Point. We've tried to go as far as Flow's ducts go, which is to Gun Bay. In their ducts, simply to put our feeder fiber onto there and then pop up with our distribution fiber on the poles in that area. No luck.
Mr. Chairman, through you, obviously I missed the response from the witness from Flow, but I recognized and accepted that my question was already asked and answered. We had a chat, certainly, during the break, and the response from Flow to the claim that C3 has been asking for access to this ductwork so that they can connect their devices and their service. The response was they have not received any such requests. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman, so that I don't speak out of turn from the witness or to the witness? All right. So the response from Flow was they have not received any requests from C3 or otherwise to piggyback to access their existing infrastructure. How do you respond to that?
Well, we have not asked to use their fiber. We've asked to get access to the ducts, to put in our inner ducts to basically use our own fiber. So that portion, if that's what he's considered that to mean, he would be right. But we've asked to go, and I can send you the paperwork to go into lots of ducts around this island, especially going east. We've had duct surveys. We've paid for duct surveys. We paid for a duct survey for Georgetown. Took our money and still hasn't done it. So, facts is facts.
I certainly would appreciate, and I know C3 has provided an excellent bundle to this committee. I would ask you to simply send over the rest of it, so at least we can have some evidence upon which to make any recommendations going forward.
Mr. Mayor, you keep using the term to put an inner duct. Why is it necessary for you to put a duct inside of what I believe is PVC pipe ducting that they already have? Just for my and the public edification.
That's a requirement by Flow or Cable and Wireless. They want us to be within an inner duct inside of their duct.
Is that a space problem or?
I think it's probably more to protect their cables that's in there. We'll pull in the fiber and then we'll pull in, well, or the inner duct, and we'll pull our fiber through that. So.
Okay. To ask you how far east you've gotten and when you expect to get it north side, but that would be a superfluous question right now. The question I have to ask is, in order to reach the eastern districts, having come against the impediments that you have, is it not possible to do a wireless connection from Georgetown, say, to an antenna in Northside and then distribute from that by fiber, or is that technology not available?
Mr. Chairman, I heard you complaining about having a wireless solution in your house earlier in the PAC meeting. So our technology is fiber to the home. It's a GPON system, so we don't have a wireless license either. To be quite honest, I don't know whether there's any spectrum space to be able to do a 5G without actually clawing some of it back from the flows and the Digicel.
Are you basically saying that the amount of spectrum that we need, you're saying there's a possibility that is unavailable that you would need?
In the 3.5 to 3.7, yes, that's been allocated for most of that's been allocated. I think it's some reserve for government's 911 or something service or something, but I think a lot of that's been allocated. They'd have to claw some of that back.
Yeah, because originally when we started out, there were three. Was Cable and Wireless, was Digicel, and was AT&T. So there was definitely capacity already in that space for at least the three providers. So now you're really down to two. So as you said, I mean, it's time maybe to claw back some. I think Digicel may have ended up with some of AT&T spectrum when they did the acquisition back then. And I very much doubt that they could be using all of that.
No.
Well, one of the things I just want to touch back on with regards to off-reg, and this has been the crux of the matter, and I don't know if you would catch the earlier part with terms of Cable and Wireless, and speaking about the regulatory fees and everything else, with Cayman being, I guess, some of the ice in the region. Granted that we don't charge taxation to companies, but one of the things that I think is necessary for us to look at as a country as a whole, especially when it comes on to investing in infrastructure, is what incentives can we put in place to incentivize companies, especially Caymanian-owned companies like yours, to really push it in and to push forward. And the reason why this bothers me on a personal level is having some experience in telecoms and seeing that many of the growth in some of these companies came from buying smaller companies. I give you a perfect example, Bermuda. When AT&T bought it was expanding in Bermuda, the company that they bought was actually started and owned by a Bermudian. So we saw in some of these places where many of these local telcos were actually owned by the nationals within the country. And to some extent, even after the purchase, some of those nationals, due to, I guess, looking at the economies of scale and growing, still retain a percentage ownership in these companies. And that's one of the things with Cayman that has kind of really bothered me, where when we look at this business, we look at the amount of wealth in this country, but yet so much of the essential services. I mean, CUC at least is publicly traded. Every Caymanian has a right to go down there and get piece of it, and can own, and even our pensions and everything else. But these are the kind of things that we need to do as a country to incentivize our own people. What is it that you think or you would like to see done to incentivize businesses like yourself, who is willing to push out the tens of millions of dollars needed to put a much needed infrastructure that the country needs? Because in addition to, of course, it being a good business, it's also good for the country as a whole to have fiber throughout the entire country. I mean, at this point, I mean, what do you think could be done to get companies like yourself? I mean, what can the government do, or anyone can do to help companies like yourself?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the first thing you do is get a regulator regulating this properly and quickly and efficiently. We've invested a lot of money. We spun our wheels, spending a lot of money on legal services that we shouldn't have. It should have been a regulator, file a dispute, do the questions, and get through the system. As far as going to some of these other pockets, when you're looking at it here, at the rest of the island, that's got to be done. When you go east, I think the government may have to look at some sort of rural assistance program to basically build a fiber infrastructure that people can use when you go out there, because you know the cost. This, you know, Chris, Mr. Sanders, you worked in that, you worked in the sector. It's capital intensive, and you know you've got barriers to entry is extremely high, and the other thing is get us access to the landing station so we can start paying. We can negotiate better terms for off-island capacity.
May I make a suggestion on something that maybe you guys want to entertain? I just have this sneaky feeling that if you guys were to go out and probably raise capital on the local market, because there's a lot of people right now with a lot of pension money, and probably some of them don't know what to do with, other than maybe stick it in credit union or something. I think what it is that you're trying to do, and to expand on the point that my colleague from Prospect raised before, in terms of literally laying that entire fiber throughout this entire country, I just have the sneaky feeling that a lot of people would invest in a company like that. And not only that, those are the kind of people that once invested will become customers, because they know that at least they're spending money back with themselves. Is that something that you guys would even entertain?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely, that was our long-term plan, was to get to the company profitable, get it built to a certain, and go to the market, local market here to raise more funds. I've been privileged enough to, you know, find 5 Caymanians that invested in this. 2 of them are here. There's, you know, 2 more, 3 more. But, you know, the company has to grow, has to how to build it to grow. And when people look at it and they look at the issues of investing and going look at this, it comes back to the same thing, the regulatory issues that are outstanding, because they do their due diligence as well. And they see that, you know, hey, you got 7 disputes. You know, so you got to get across that barrier first.
But here's something to think about. You go and you find 1,000 or 1,500 Caymanians invest in your company. 10 months away from election, you really and truly think at that point the political will isn't going to change to say to them, guys, get this done. But I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, going back to what, not to belabor what a colleague from Prospect said, but I also find it where I do have a problem, because I have a subdivision in my area where there are all the utilities are underground. And we only found that out when they wanted street lights, and we realized there were no poles there to put any street lights on. You know what I mean? But, I mean, they had other lamps that was there. But the point is, in this day and age, looking at our terrain, looking at where we live, looking at the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues we faced after Ivan was basically poles being down and everything else. I mean, why not just say, you know what, let us go make the necessary investment at this point and just put everything underground and just start moving everything underground from now. And at least that will take away one of the worries that we have. And I believe that those are the kind of big, bold initiatives that if you guys decided to push that, I am almost certain you can go and easily raise $20, $30 million from the local market, because there are people here with money willing to invest in Cayman. And for something like this, I think these are the kind of things that we need to be looking at. And I would definitely encourage you not to wait till you become profitable, because the whole idea of investing in a company is you buy the stock low, and then you just wait for it to appreciate. People want to come in the ground now where they can say, you know what, I can push this money away for 3, 4, 5 years, and know that 3, 4, 5 years down, at least it should be worth something. And I mean, I would definitely tell you to look at it, because at the end of the day, no disrespect to the other carriers, but for where we're sitting right now, we're still about what's best for the Cayman Islands and what's best for the Caymanian people. And having our own people, own key infrastructure is in the best interest of the Cayman Islands and in the best interest of the Caymanian people. And we need to do more to encourage that. So I would put that out there for something you to consider. And if there's any, and well, ask the question, then what would you like to see us change? Because if there are weaknesses in the law, the weaknesses in the regulations, obviously you said they need a proper regulatory lawyer at OFREG to deal with these issues. That's a feedback I've gotten from other people within the telco space, also the ICT space, that it seems to be lacking in that area on the regulatory side compared to where they were before. We have recognized, even from Mr. Ali's testimony here last week, that there are internal challenges where before you had a ICT, a focus sector, now they're basically competing with other areas and so forth. But we need to realistically look at what needed. ICT is paying its way. It's putting millions of dollars a year in the government coffers. So I don't see why we should be having some of these challenges in this space. So if that's a policy issue, then that is something that we can push to deal with the government from that standpoint. But in terms of getting the right people in place, well, I mean, I'll say this much too. I mean, maybe to some extent, when OFREG is going to court, I mean, you guys have some competent lawyers back there, become friends of the courts or friends of the OFREG and go pound those guys up too.
Some time ago, there was a lot of activity in the middle of the road on 7 Mile Beach, right? That was putting in fiber and stuff, right? And TV cable.
Mr. Chairman, we put our infrastructure down we use Flo's duct along West Bay Road, all the way to the Kipton, I think. That was done. Ours weren't intrusive because we just pulled it into the duct, but I think other carriers cut through the middle of the road.
My question is, then why can't you just do the same thing going east and put your own duct down the middle road like they did over there?
I think it's just the cost of doing it. That's, it's expensive. It's there. I mean, let's face it. That duct is on public land. That's the roads are owned by Cayman. So we shouldn't be stopped from getting access to it. I mean, they should. It got 3 ducts, 4 ducts. Clear out of the way. Let's go.
I understand that the law. The ICTA law specifically provides that the ICTA can force one of its licensees to provide access to their ducts. The question is, and I guess we'll have to ask Mr. Ali when he comes back tomorrow afternoon, why is it not being done in eastern districts in particular where there is low demand but the people deserve to have equal coverage?
Mr. Chairman, I think it gets back down to Ali, great guy, and I see his struggles, but it gets back to having the resources to actually fight them. They've got legal counsel, they got tons of lawyers behind them. The longer they keep us out, the longer they slow everything down, the quicker it is to run us out of business. You got to lawyer them up.
Reference to the lawyer present, right? That's why I like to write laws in clear language. Shall, this thing about maybe or might be or could be convenient or maybe it should happen or should not happen. That's what causes the problems. But I think that the way I read the ICTA law, they have full authority to order Flo to give you space in their duct.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a point right now what we're dealing with. we applied to build a duct from Cricket Square to One Technology Square because we wanted to go into One Technology Square to backhaul our own capacity, our local loop of the Maya, no, not Maya, the CGFS thing. Flow would not give us the locates of their cable, so they basically blocked us. We applied to go from Health City to Maya 1. Why? To get into the Maya 1 landing station, to backhaul our thing. We're paying them $28,000 a month to bring that loop down. We wanted to get in here to bring that down. They would not give us the locates to both of those places in there. So we couldn't do that connection. We still can't. The regulator reviewed it and made an opinion that he had no issues with why they wouldn't give us, and told him to give us our locates on us. That letter was issued the 20th of March of this year. We didn't push on it because of the COVID situation, but as soon as the Premier took us to level 2, I wrote a letter and said, okay, let's go. They have ignored that letter. I followed up with another letter. They ignored that. I copied the CEO of Ofreg on it. He wrote a letter to the chairman, well, the country manager, and that has been ignored to this date. So that tells you they have no respect for the regulator. Issue some fines, let's get them in. If you got a stick and you don't use it.
So then, from what you're basically saying then, is it that the law is inadequate in dealing with these, I guess, issues?
Mr. Chairman, I think they've got away with doing nothing for so long. They just basically choosing to ignore the regulator. The regulator's basically powerless.
We had asked a question earlier with Flow with regards to access to the Maya 1 cable. And they were basically, something along the lines is that the space that they have is limited. It wasn't built for more, but they had basically said that the people, you can basically build something next door and get access or something to that effect. And we can always go back and take a look at the testimony that was given. But they basically said, well, if you want to connect, you can go build to it and we'll allow you to connect.
Mr. Chairman, for us to get access to Maya 1 landing station, we need to put in a 1 RU switch. That's that, in a rack, 1 RU. We asked them for that. They told us, nope, couldn't get in there. We said, okay, can we have space on the land to build a small building because it has to have power and all that other stuff? They said, no, they had future expansion plans of that building. That's on 2-point-something acres of land. They told us the only how we're going to do is a mid-span, which basically would give us the fiber linked to a manhole on the corner of the building. It has no power. We can't put a switch in it. It's susceptible to water damage. And this is a switch. It's a Cisco switch to move the traffic around. So let's not go that way. I mean, I'm just trying to be quite honest. I'm just sick of the bovine scatology. Excuse me, can I get arrested for that? I don't know, but that's what I'm getting here from.
Not inside here. You can say whatever you want.
That's what we're getting from people when we try to do anything here. So it's just that's got to stop, and the regulators got to man up and use the stick and let's go.
One of the things that ICTA identified to me in particular several years ago was the lack of fines and the fact that the fine and through private members' motion, myself and the member for East End convinced the government to put some penalties in the law. And what we were looking for was graduation penalties, which would incentivize people to do something. So we were looking for, if I give a $5 fine, if I was paying for 10 megabytes and I was only getting 6, and they had an established acceptable measuring system that they could use. Because we've been told today now that unless you're measuring their server, what we're measuring is incorrect. And they would come out to my house, for instance, check it. If it was only 6, it would be an automatic fine of $50, right? And it would be $50 per day, as long as for how long took that provider to up me to get 10. And they came back with the same instrument and measured, and I was getting 10. unfortunately, what the government of the day did under the Honorable Kurt Tibbetts was they put in this penalty that says up to $500,000, I believe was right. So what happens now is every time ICTA try to enforce something, the big companies who can afford it are looking at a $500,000 fine, right? And then they lawyer up. Whereas if they were only looking at a $5 fine that they could collect in a couple of days, they would go and fix the problem. So I think part of what probably needs to be done is to try to get that kind of stuff in the ICTA law, which will better equip them to get compliance. Because if they could say to Cable and Wireless now, well, you've been so many months you haven't complied, right? So it's a $500 fine now, right? And if you don't comply by next Friday, it's another $500 fine, you see? So there's an incentive to them to stop instead of having to argue about the $500,000, which will encourage them to lawyer up. It's kind of difficult to go and get 10 lawyers to work for you if your fine is only $500.
Mr. Chairman, competition will do that. Because if I'm paying for service and I ain't getting it, and I've got competition outside the door, I can change. Right now, unfortunately, you're in north side and you don't have one provider.
But I can't get the competition to my door. I switch providers and I'm worse off, and I switch back again, I'm worse off again. Right? But do you think a kind of graduated penalty like that would be more, would get better results?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be honest with you. We had an outage for 27 hours on May 10th on our network. I don't think you've probably ever seen, but C3 issued credits to customers for that outage. Was not our fault. It was our upstream provider had a fiber cut outside our control, but we issued the credit to our customers. We told them fill out a form if you were affected, and boom, we issued a credit. We've done that twice now for outages. Look back and see the last time you got issued a credit for having an outage from anybody else. But that's because we're a Caymanian company, we care.
Mr. Chair, all I can say is I do wish your organization well. I do know from being in a past life, I have sat at the Cable and Wireless table in a previous life. I have heard I remember clearly as day, one island came asking for funds to do a particular project. And several months later, we were asking for an update on the project. And we were told the project was not off the ground because it was awaiting regulatory approval. The chairman then asked, what is the penalty what is the fine if we breach the approval? He said maybe $300, $400 a day, something like that. And he says, how much money we're going to make a day from doing this? It was much higher. And his response was, go do the project, pay the fine if they catch you. That is the mindset in this business. It is a dog-eat-dog business. And none of these guys who have made that investment is going to roll over and allow you to take their food. So I'm telling you straight up, if you want it, they're going to give it to you. You'll have to go take it, one way or the other.
Mr. Chairman, that's why we fight them on all these disputes.
Randy and company, good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marion and Mr. Bergströms, for coming in. We think it's been a useful exchange, and we will see how we can assist you in our report. But thank you very much for coming.
Mr. Chairman, I think Chris would like to make a statement read a statement about some of the issues that he's seeing.
Well,
he's better at reading them than me.
I guess we don't normally allow individual statements, but if it's a short statement, we'll.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, through you, would any other board members like to say something that would help the situation?
Mr. Chairman, Chris Bergström, shareholder and one of the board of director members of C3. We came here today and we've been very grateful for this opportunity to appear before you, because we do have a situation, and everybody's pointed to it, where we're dealing with the dollar, and that's what it comes down to. When we look at the different challenges that we've been faced, when we talk about being blocked or prevented, It's not really blocked and prevented in the normal sense of the word. What they do is they make it untenable for us to actually reach the goals that we need to. And we're not supported by the current regulator or even the government in the way that they provide the regulator with the tools to do that job. The difficulty comes when you really break it down at looking at some very basic things. We have a prepared statement, but I think it's easier for me just to discuss it like this. We have a utility provider to provide electricity for the country. They have been granted an easement by the government to place their poles on public and private lands. That infrastructure, they are allowed to get repaid for by the consumers of electricity in our country. So the infrastructure is paid for by the people. We take that same infrastructure, and because it's probably smarter to attach to that infrastructure than put other infrastructure in place, and as we try to attach to it, we started out at $150 per pole, and we're up into astronomical figures now, where it is cheaper for us to actually buy a light pole and stick it in the ground ourselves and put our infrastructure up on it than to make ready one pole to get to you. So those are the challenges we're faced with, just to break it down into the facts. Likewise, when we talk about reaching to the Maya 1, they don't want to give us access to the Maya 1. All the traffic for the Cayman Islands, if I make a call to you from one cell phone provider to the other, it has to leave the Cayman Islands, go up to Florida, and come back. All that traffic gets charged, and the money gets collected by the legacy provider for that service. They have no reason to let us get into that. If we want to get cheaper rates for our people in this country, we need to break that legacy. It's as simple as that.
Hold on. Just want to understand. You're saying a local call actually goes up to Miami and come back down to Cayman?
I'll let Randy answer that if you don't mind, Mr.
Please.
Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, all the providers now use voice over internet protocol. So any call that's going to travel on internet, there's no interconnection point in the Cayman Islands, no internet exchange point in the Cayman Islands. So all traffic has to go up to either Maya 1 or CGFS and come back down. You send a text message to me, a WhatsApp message, it goes up and comes down. It has nothing in here. It goes further than that. There's no local interconnection of phone calls agreements here in the Cayman Islands. We only have one with Cable and Wireless. To give you the cost on that, we pay 12 cents to Cable and Wireless for a landline to cell numbers, okay? Why that is so high is because in the past, they were using TDM, traditional divisional multiplexing phone service, analog, or POTS, they used to call it. When we came along, and other new providers came along, they used a VoIP switch, voice over the internet protocol. Cable and Wireless didn't have a VoIP switch, so they used the traditional TDM, and we had to install a SS7, which is a signaling device that lets VoIP talk to this service, and that's why those rates are high, because they set those rates here, and that's what it is. But now they have voice over internet protocol as well. But there's no interconnection agreements between C3 and Logic, C3 and Digicel, that we could pass our traffic rather than using Cable and Wireless. I brought this to the regulator's attention, because if anything ever happens, we lose that thing, it should be kept here. Local calls should be kept here. Local calls should be, if we lose a connection, the only connection point in the Cayman Islands where traffic goes without going through Cable and Wireless is 911. We all have interconnection, we all touch there. We could easily do interconnection agreements there. It is available, and it should be implemented right away. A national emergency, we can't continue this way. And it's going to happen sooner or later.
Okay, so just be clear, is the C3 calls them has to go to Miami and come back? Because I think Digicel and Cable and Wireless, I mean, their local calls, I think, remain local.
It's VoIP over internet protocol. We got to go up on the...
Or for you guys, but...
For all of us, we're using VoIP.
Oh,
Voice over Internet protocol is VoIP.
okay.
So you got to go on the internet, unless they've set up some kind of exchange between them. But ours go up and come back.
All right. Cool.
Any other questions?
And by the way, the rate should have came down drastically, but those rates haven't been looked at since that's been put in place. So, yeah, it is much cheaper to complete a call to the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico than to complete calls locally.
That's the one that we were, before you guys came in, we were actually on the floor about that same thing. Because I remember back in 2003, it was like 18.5 cents. You have no just confirmed that 12 cents is that CI US.
CI.
So it's 12. So it's gone from 18.5 cents CI down to 12 cents.
Well,
that's the one.
That's mobile to landline.
Yeah, that's the one that we were talking about. I was still saying it's very expensive because it was basically like about 1 cent to send a call up on MCI. I mean, back then, I don't know what it is now, but yeah, so.
It's fractions of a penny.
Yep. Less than 1 cent, yeah. All right.
Thank you all very much. And my grandma used to say, watch this space.
Thank you very much, guys.
The meeting is adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. What we're going to have, we're going to have an in-camera admin meeting now.